considerable amounts of time in cultures in different parts of the world, having lived among Native Americans, on among the Kiowa people on the Navajo reservation. There's a tremendous difference in the way people relate or engage with one another. And yet, in our more mainstream American culture, there's much more of a tendency to this kind of gaminess that is very prevalent. And I know when I was growing up in my teens and 20s and 30s, it never came naturally to me. And I know some people, I guess, like I have friends, for instance, who like one who has a doctorate in mathematics, so he has this aptitude that I don't have. And so I think some people have more of an aptitude to kind of play those games, and others don't. And especially when you have individuals that more avoidant attachment styles and people who are just lack of emotional investment, that gaminess comes a bit more naturally. And I think a lot of it too is just, it's baked into our culture in many ways. You see it in movies and sitcoms and romantic comedies and novels and everything. And so there's this thing about all kinds of things, playing hard to get. Books like The Rules that came out quite a few years ago, but one of the rules they were advising women to follow as they engage with men was seldom, if ever, return a man's call. Which for me, if the woman doesn't return a call, it's like, okay, she's not interested, forget it, move on. And also just, you have other individuals who are just derive some form of perverse gratification by, for instance, feigning interest, acting innocent, conveying this sense of promise of connection and intimacy, and yet they don't have any genuine interest, and yet it's more like they're feeding off the attention and of that other individual who finds them attractive, who desires them, who wants to be in a relationship, who's desiring that closeness or intimacy. And some of them do it, because for them it maybe because of their own emotional wounding, because of their own lack of self-esteem or self-worth. And there's that sense of momentary gratification that they derive from the attention and the fact that another person finds them attractive and desires to be with them. But it's a dangerous game to play because in many ways, it could be deeply wounding, especially for those of us who truly desire deeply loving, lasting, intimate connection. So I don't like to have to rely on my notes so much, but I wrote this chapter and I encourage you to actually read the chapter because I have so much packed in there, so much information that I don't want to spend just go through the whole thing. It's just too much. But in order for you to gain a more in-depth understanding, if this is an issue that concerns you, because I know a lot of people, dating, are faced with these challenges. When I was, before COVID, I was teaching classes on a weekly basis in New York and Boston. And all the time I would have people showing up, and they were just being strung along and they were, getting all kinds of mixed and ambiguous signals and just trying to make sense of it. And in many instances, just they were having a very difficult time letting go. And so these patterns are fairly prevalent. I think it was back in, what was it, 1995, where the Backstreet Boys released that song called Quit Playing Games with My Heart. And the vocalist, Brian Littrell, was like, in the lyrics, he's like, I don't know if he wrote this based upon his personal experience or whatever, but he's in the lyrics, he's pleading, just, for that, was it, it's expressing the pain and frustration of just feeling tormented, because the woman that he was desiring a connection with was just giving him all kinds of mixed messages. He's longing for that honesty and transparency and a genuine connection. And where do I want to go with this? I think a lot of the gaminess too also stems from ambiguity, and the fact that much of our population has never learned how to work effectively with their own emotional responses. And so therefore, if we can't work with our emotions, that leads to all kinds of conflicted feelings. It makes us very ambiguous. And so with that, when people are shutting down or disconnecting emotionally, they can be very incongruent, again, giving off all kinds of mixed signals. I notice differences too with the genders as well. And it's not always the case, but these are common patterns. I see a lot of men who can be like puppy dogs, who, if they form an attachment to a woman, and again, she could act very innocent and just come across as being interested, and yet she's not. And so I see a lot of guys getting strung along, and I also see instances of women that get attached to these guys who maybe because of status or because of his perceived desirability and the fact that he's had all these conquests of other women, and either way, it's can be very painful to get tangled up in that sort of thing. And for those of us who desire deeply, have this profound desire to have someone in our life to love and be loved, and even more so if we have these profound deficits, maybe we didn't receive the love and the care and the nurturance that we needed while we were growing up, and so it just leaves these again profound voids or emotional deficits and this hunger, and we're trying to make up for it, compensate for it, but it just makes us extraordinarily vulnerable, even more so if we suffered abuse of some form, emotional, physical abuse, for instance. And so it's like we're wanting to have that connection with someone. I think it's like we're trying to make up for a lot of what we didn't get as children and adolescents. And especially too, those of us with what's referred to as anxious or insecure attachment styles, we are the ones who are most vulnerable to this type of pattern. Again, I noticed a profound difference depending on culture, from one culture to the next. This gaminess that I'm referring to, it's so much more prevalent in our mainstream American culture. But when I was in my late teens and I found myself living among a community of predominantly Kiowa, Apache, and Comanche Indians in Oklahoma, and then later on the Navajo reservation, it was completely different. I mean, the Native American women tended to be, if they were, well, in general, Native Native Americans I found were much more honest in the sense that if they didn't like you, you knew it. If they were neutral, or if they liked you as a friend, and if someone was romantically interested in you, they didn't hide it. I mean, it was pretty clear in quite a few instances where Native women would pursue me. And the nice thing about that is there wasn't all this guessing, and I knew where I stood with them. And it made it much easier for me to relax. Being in Sri Lanka, I ended up leaving the Native communities because the alcoholism, the alcohol-related dysfunction was so prevalent. And, seeing that whole destructive influence was very unsettling for me. And although part of me wanted to stay for the remainder of my life, and yet that older traditional culture, the fact that I trained with one of the last surviving traditional doctors, medicine men, I spent a lot of time with the Native elders and the ceremonies. But as those generations were dying out, and just the alcohol-related dysfunction taking over, and so I bailed out, and I found myself back in the mainstream culture, and it was a very difficult struggle for me because it was just a very different way in which people would, a different mating ritual, I guess you would say, and it didn't come naturally to me. But fortunately, after some years, I just had an intuition, made my way to Sri Lanka, and I found a similar way of that kind of directness. And I find the difference in a lot of cultures, it's just like there's just more of a openness in a way that people would, they're connected with their bodies and their feelings, and they feel their desire and they express their desires. And there's just more of this way in which people get together. And whereas in this culture, I think part of it's maybe just the way people disconnect from their feelings and their physical bodies, and there's this internalized shame. And there's something like, well, if you have these feelings, you shouldn't show it. You conceal your feelings, and you're not supposed to care. And for me, it's like, what the fuck? It's just bullshit. And I just couldn't relate. I mean, for me, that's not a way of relating, and it just never came naturally for me. So my attempts to date often in this culture were pretty disastrous. It just didn't work a lot of times. Sometimes it did, but a lot of times it didn't, because I just could not play the games. And so there were lonely times. But anyway, let's keep moving. And I think a lot of it, again, too, it's for some reason, there's this fear of intimacy. And I think a lot of that, too, is that, when we shut down emotionally, like it's through our feelings that we connect with these deeper parts of ourselves. And, it's like we form a relationship with our core being. But when we're shutting down emotionally, it creates a lot of this fracturing within our psyche, and we're disconnecting from parts of ourselves, and the parts of ourselves that are wounded, that are conflicted, that places where we don't want to go to, issues we don't want to look at. We end up splitting off or disconnecting from parts of ourselves. And so I think a lot of what's happening is that what we see in our culture with a lot of this gaminess and the disconnect, and the fact that we can't just honestly and openly, we can't feel what we honestly feel and convey that, express what we feel. And a major reflection of that is the fact that we have to rely on these stupid ass dating apps, because we can't just openly express what we're feeling. We can't engage with the people around us. We have to again rely on the apps, because the disconnect within ourself is reflected outwards around us or disconnect to other people around us. And I hope I'm making sense with that. So if we're not able to be connected with our own feelings, it's like we're not able to be vulnerable with ourselves, and therefore we can't with anyone else, really. And so, yeah, building on what I was saying. I think I'm just going to read some parts of this because this is so detailed. I can't remember a lot of it, actually. So when faced with their own vulnerabilities, emotional scars, low self-esteem, some attempt to compensate by manipulating the emotions of others, especially in the context of romantic relationship. These games can act as a temporary salve, providing a short-lived boost of confidence or feelings of control. Driving these behaviors are unmet emotional needs that stem from past traumas, unfulfilled desires, our history of being undervalued. Engaging in these games becomes a way to seek validation. For instance, if someone feels insecure about their self-worth, having multiple people show interest in them, or being able to control a partner's emotions provides a fleeting sense of worthiness. So those who play these emotional games, they often rely on their physical appearance because in this culture, our society, beauty takes on a disproportionate value. But as beauty fades with time and the attention and the admiration that were once so plentiful diminishes, then at that point, it's like we, where was that? We feel overlooked. And, if we don't address our emotional wounds, or if that individual who relied on their beauty doesn't address their emotional wounds, then they haven't cultivated that deeper intrinsic value. They're often feeling, as they get older, left adrift because they no longer hold that value or relevance. So tragically, those who fall into this pattern, this playing with other people's emotions, it often results in cycles of short-lived relationships, lack of truly meaningful connections, or they might experience a momentary sense of power and gratification that comes from manipulating the emotions of those who find them attractive and desire connection. They often miss out on the profound joy and the understanding, the mutual growth, and the truly fulfilling, lasting bonds that come from genuine, deep, lasting relationships. By exploiting the emotional vulnerability of others, it might provide them with an immediate sense of power and gratification, but these fleeting moments of validation are often overshadowed by underlying feelings of guilt and remorse. So it's a very complex dynamic. These games, they could boost their diminishing self-esteem, but on the other hand, deep down, it's like they know they're manipulating and they're hurting other people who are genuinely seeking intimacy. And karma does come back around at some time. At some point, it's going to bite them. But this ongoing cycle not only damages their potential for authentic relationships, but it also erodes their self-image. Trapped in this guilt-driven cycle, they perpetuate their destructive patterns, continually seeking redemption, although not knowing how to attain it. The real tragedy lies in the untapped potential that many of these potential individuals have for deep connections and meaningful relationships, because by addressing and healing their own deep emotional wounds, they would learn to relate to other people in a way that's more authentic without having to manipulate other people, and they'd be able to therefore find to experience genuine love and an appreciation for themselves and others. there's so much more that I can't convey everything within the scope of this video. I encourage you, I'm going to post the link to the article. And one of the challenges I face is that, I write these in-depth articles. It's just a whole lot more than I could remember all at once. And I don't use a teleprompter or anything. So I would encourage you to go ahead and watch or read the article as well. And if you do happen to like this video, you're watching on YouTube, do click like below. And also, if you feel so inclined, you could subscribe to my channel. And moving along. So I know, as I said, for me, I'm very fortunate that I had the experience of being able to live within different cultures, because I know a lot of people that have shown up in my classes over the years is that they seemed to be continually caught up in the cycle where they were wanting connection, and yet they were in the space where they were emotionally invulnerable, and they often found themselves manipulated by those who fed off of their attention and their desire for connection. And it caused them like enormous pain and struggle. For me, having connections with people in other cultures was actually very healing. And in many ways, I did, the times I did try to connect, and where I found myself in situations where somebody was playing me emotionally, and the fact that I did carry a lot of the emotional wounding, the traumas of my own childhood and adolescence. So not only was it triggering the traumas or the emotional wounding from earlier in my life, but it was simultaneously inflicting additional emotional wounding. It was making the situation worse for me. But I just, as I described in other videos and articles, I would instinctively dive into those painful emotions, breathing into the feelings of sadness, the hurt. As I'd work through these emotions, that made it a lot easier for me to let go, to see or recognize what was happening, but especially in addition, seeking out the various interventions as I worked with gifted healers, as I went through the Vision Quest, a traditional Native American healing practice where I go to fast alone in the mountains for the 4 days and nights without food and water. And during these experiences, it's like these experiences, these relationships that were causing me so much pain, they would be coming up into my awareness. And there's a way in which a lot of the pain, the emotions that we're experiencing, they don't fully register. It's like we're not able to fully digest them. In a sense, we're experiencing, I would say we're in a state of shock. We're traumatized by these events, and we have trouble comprehending what's going on. And again, we're not able to process the emotions. So when I'd be working with these healers, when I'd be on the Vision Quest, all this, the whole experience, all the emotions would be coming into my awareness. It's like I would be digesting, that heartrending drama, that interaction with, say, that woman I at that time would be wanting a connection with, all the emotions that were related to it. And as that would happen, I would gain a lot of clarity, and I could feel these unhealthy attachments beginning to dissolve. And that enabled me to let go. And so as time went on, it's like I outgrew those kinds of individuals, and I would even, I would feel, or I would sense that kind of gaminess, that kind of manipulative tendency, toxicity on the part of that other individual. And I actually began to experience a sense of revulsion there. And, in time, it was like this, um, it was like some kind of force that was repelling me and that other person, which is good, not to have those kinds of individuals into my life. It's like I outgrew them. What I found is that as I would work with people, that those who worked with me individually, the individual sessions, they would also have a very similar experience as I would work with them. They would, it would enable them to digest those painful relational dramas they were caught up in, do the deep level processing of all the emotions that they were holding in their body, that were maintaining those healthy attachments to individuals who were causing them so much pain. And as they were processing, digesting all these emotions, it made it easier for them to let go. They were outgrowing those unhealthy attachments. And I've seen quite a few of them go on to attract someone into their life with whom they could experience very deep, meaningful, and loving connection. All of us have the power to choose in the way we relate. And so we can't choose to relate in a way that, is based on respect, kindness, consideration. Everyone has their emotional wounding, has experienced traumas along the way. Everyone's carrying these deep emotional wounds. And so if you're exploiting these vulnerabilities for your own personal gain, it just makes you a shallow, self-serving asshole. So stop it. I mean, seriously, do you like being lied to, cheated on, taken advantage of, deceived, or abused in any way? I mean, how would you feel if these behaviors were done to you, or you remember how it feels when they were done to you in the past? Of course you don't like that. So, think of the way you want to be treated and relate to other people accordingly. If you're feeling neutral about somebody, then be honest about it. If you're not attracted to somebody, just don't string someone along. Again, it's just being an asshole. If you're not interested, just be upfront to the best of your ability. I mean, some people, it's hard for them to get the hint, but do the best you can there. If you do truly like someone, if you're romantically interested in them to the best of your ability, make an effort to be open, and just, feel what you honestly feel. And if they can't handle it, just move on. And if it hurts, that they don't reciprocate, then, well, what do you feel? How does that feel? Where are those feelings in your body? Drop deep into your body, breathe into those feelings as you work through the pain of rejection. That in itself facilitates healing. It helps you to grow and evolve, and it helps you to, it facilitates this process by which, what I found is by working through the pain of rejection, I found it much easier to let go when the feelings were not reciprocal on the part of the other person. And that letting go came, again, as I said, so much more easily. But also, I found that I tended to feel attraction or feel desire to be in a relationship with individuals where there was a reciprocation, and also a desire to be in a relationship with individuals with whom it was a better match. And so there's just working with, at times when, as I said, when our desire to be with someone isn't reciprocated, when we can work with that. And as we work through those feelings, it gives us an opportunity to heal a deep emotional wound. And that is an important part of what's ultimately going to enable us to form healthier attachments. Self-awareness is crucial here because we need to be able to, one, access and also work constructively with our feelings. So if you do feel a need to manipulate others, well, you obviously have some work to do. There's some wounding in yourself. And so instead of being a perpetrator, instead of resorting to emotional predation, do the deep level work. What is it within you that would lead you to want to exploit someone else's emotional vulnerabilities for your own gratification? And also, if you find yourself on the receiving end of another person's attempts to manipulate you, to string you along, whatever, notice how it's affecting you emotionally. Is it causing you to feel anxious or insecure? Are you trying to hold on to that person or control them or control the outcome of the situation? So anytime you do feel yourself being emotionally triggered, notice what you're feeling. Where are these feelings situated in your body? Drop into the depth of these feelings, breathing softly and deeply. As you process the sadness, the grief, the hurt, that's going to give you greater clarity, insight, and understanding. It's going to help you to let go when it's not a good match. Now, if these patterns do persist, if they're deeply entrenched and you keep getting strung along by individuals who are just exploiting you emotionally, then seek out intervention. I mean, reach out to me, because people that I work with individually, they're able to dissolve those unhealthy attachments, work through all those painful emotions, and get to a place where they feel much lighter, much freer. And again, I have had lots of people I work with move on and attract someone into their life that they can, with whom they can truly love and be loved by. So as you go forward, a few things I want to encourage you to demonstrate: empathy and understanding. Anytime you're interacting with somebody in a romantic or any context for that matter, put yourself in that person's shoes, making a concerted effort to understand them, their feelings, their perspectives, their life experiences, their vulnerabilities. How can you demonstrate through your words and actions kindness, consideration? How can you interact with them in a nurturing way that enables them to feel safe and cared for, and also that results in a mutually beneficial connection? Another thing is authenticity. Drop the pretenses. Being authentic is about expressing yourself openly and honestly, without trying to mask your true feelings, without putting on a facade, without trying to appease and impress or influence others. Start by working to gain a deeper understanding of your own needs, beliefs, values, and boundaries too. And also strive to communicate openly and honestly. Sharing your personal experiences and feelings can deepen the connection with others, making your relationships more meaningful and rewarding. Being open and honest while directly expressing your feelings rather than suppressing or hiding them also helps to prevent misunderstandings and resentments. Being trustworthy is also important. Learn to live from a place of integrity by honoring your commitments. In other words, do what you say what you do. When you commit to something and you follow through, it helps to build trust between yourself and other individuals. Being reliable ensures that you're someone that can be counted on in times of need and also in everyday situations. Relationships are one of the greatest treasures that we have in our lives. And I feel that so many people fail to grasp this. And like a plant, relationships need consistent care and attention A healthy game plan for relationships is about creating genuine, deep connection. And it's based on mutual respect and understanding. And so by focusing on the principles of integrity, such as authenticity, empathy, consistent care, your relationships can thrive and become a source of mutual joy and fulfillment. I'm actually flying out tomorrow morning, and I still have a lot of packing to do. So I wanted to get this video shot today. So I'm going to leave you with that. Again, if I could be of assistance, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll look forward to connecting with you. Bye now.